Welcome to Fantasy View, where I share my opinions on fantasy novels that have caught my eye, and I let you know about the books I've written myself. I'm Jason Hubbard. It's been a while since my last episode, and episodes have been far and few in between, for obvious reasons, but I haven't stopped reading. I've read mostly independent authors, or at least authors who are hardly household names. So what the hell? I'll give you my thoughts on many of the books I finished, starting with what I recommend. These books may not be perfect, or even must-reads, but if you're a fan of epic fantasy, you probably can't go wrong with these ones. Mad Bride of the Ripper by Lucas Thorne is a story that mentions Jack the Ripper, but it's really a retelling of the story of Dracula, inspired by the old Hammer films. It has classic characters like Professor Van Helsing and Jonathan Harker, but the author turned even the most saintly characters from the original novel into deeply flawed souls. Combine that with the author's restless style, and you have a book that will keep you guessing. The action scene at the end was a little too gruesome for my taste, but I can't fault the author for being daring. Lady of the Helm by T.O. Monroe. I've already covered this, but I think it deserves some much needed attention. At its heart is a story of man versus monsters, but it's pretty unique in that it has a Medusa as a villain, or Gorgon for all you purists out there, plus a magic helmet that's said to drive whoever wears it insane. Its decent characterization and concept makes it worthwhile, and I plan on reading its 2 sequels later on. The Reaper's Thorn by Eric Landon is clearly a personal story from the author, about a man who's been hired to track down and eliminate a wraith who's been killing seemingly at random. The hero's trail has a surprising end, and the author injects plenty of heart into this dark thriller. Warlocks of the Sigil by Piri Ackman. It starts off with a young man named Quinn at a magic school who gets apprenticed to someone who values free thinking. Once his potential for magic awakens, Quinn discovers he has quite a useful power. But what seems like a straightforward story ends with twists and turns that may make your jaw hit the floor. I also read the sequel, which is a worthy follow-up to the first book's cliffhanger ending. Lullaby by J.L. Bryan. It's the 7th book of his Ghost Trapper series, which is like a cross between Ghostbusters and Charmed. It's about a woman named Ellie who's become a proficient ghost trapper, but her business is being overrun by a greedy corporation with a power-tripping director. The book oozes with charm thanks to the author's quirky sense of humor, and if you end up liking it, there are 12 more entries in the series, thus far. And now are the books I don't recommend. They're simply too flawed, too stupid, too unworthy of anyone's time. The Forsaken Saga by Sophia Sharp. I didn't know this story was about vampires when I got it, but that's not what turned me off. What turned me off was one of the main characters making an extremely asinine decision where he disrespected his girlfriend, and she quickly forgives him. I just couldn't even after that. Jack Fox in the Crystals of Time by G.J. Anderson. Don't let the title fool you. It's less like Harry Potter and more like Jim Henson's Labyrinth. There are characters that Jack Fox meets after getting teleported to another world that truly seem like Muppets, with the same quirky personalities and mannerisms. While there's nothing wrong with that in and of itself, I felt that the quirkiness was wildly out of place in the story. Also, the author has a lousy sense of time progression, for he implies that the heroes cross entire climate regions in only a matter of hours. You might have a better time instead with a series of books called Jeff Madison. Away with Magic by David E. Barber. The title had me expecting a wild tale full of whimsical magic spells. What I got instead was a lesson in mediocrity. It's a story about men versus orcs that's just one fantasy trope after another, with flat characters who are merely there to fulfill a plot function. The Deus Ex Machina ending didn't help matters either. The writing and editing are decent, and that's the best thing I can say about this book. Alpha World 2, Forming the Company, by Daniel Shinhoven. This is an erotic lit RPG that's not very erotic, not very exciting overall. It turns out that reading about a bunch of MMO players overcoming a difficult dungeon boss isn't as fun and compelling as the author thinks it is. The main character is also a dick. Screw this book. My Father's Swords by Dave Skinner. I thought this book would have a simple plot. Instead, it's about people traveling across dimensions, and to protect their secret, they kill any trespassers on their land. That doesn't make the characters very endearing, and some of the writing is amateurish. Next, we have books that have earned a lukewarm recommendation. They may be worthwhile, but they have some flaws that may turn you off. The Rise of Magic Collection by C.M. Raymond, L.E. Barbant, and Michael Anderle. There are 9 books in this series so far, and I've read 3 of them. A powerful sorcerer who founded a city has returned to the city after decades, only to find that his old pupil has turned the city into a deeply divided region of haves and have-nots, where only the wealthy have permission to perform magic. The founder discovers a young woman with great potential in magic and takes her under his wing, and together they plan to take back the city from its cruel tyrant. This story takes place on Earth after a great disaster ended civilization as we know it, and it contains a lot of modern speak involving a lot, and I mean a lot, of cussing. I don't mind it, but some readers do. My biggest complaint is that the story seems awfully standard with few surprises. Also, much of the villain's dialogue sounds like something you'd hear from a Saturday morning cartoon. Prophecy of Convergence by Shannon Pemerick. A fantasy book about some prophecy? Now I've seen everything! It's about 2 sisters who are shape-shifting dragons who travel the continent so that the spoiled younger sister can take a gander at the wider world and hopefully mature. There's plenty of action, attitude, and sex, but the humor didn't cut it for me. Maybe it will for you, but I don't know. Soul Gem Collector by Logan Jacobs. An erotic fantasy novel, as you can tell by the cover, that's much better than Alpha World. It's about a human living in a magic academy who happens upon a hidden talent of trapping the souls of people and magical beings in gems, which then give him magic powers. If he's found out, he's toast. But his increasing number of girlfriends vow to keep his secret. This book blurs the line between moral and immoral, but not too much so, and that's why I like it. There are a few instances of sloppy storytelling, though, that break my suspension of disbelief. Tournament of Chance, Dragon Rebel by Suzanne G. Rogers. A fantasy novel that's not part of a series? The legends were true! Think Hunger Games, but with time travel and shape-shifting dragons. And the title or tournament only happens in the first few pages. It's one of those stories where people fall head over heels in love in no time at all, but I do think it's refreshing to read a standalone story like this. The Dark Monolith, Heroes of Ravenford by F.P. Spirit. It's the third in a series that D&D players should get a kick out of, as well as players of Japanese RPGs. It's about a plucky band of heroes who strive to learn the secrets of the Dark Monolith in order to best a great enemy. There's a woman who's not as frail as she looks, and there may be dragons involved. It's basically fantasy comfort food. Fate's Fables by T. Ray Mitchell. A young and popular fantasy author gets drawn to a dilapidated library where she gets sucked into a book of unfamiliar fables. She must live through each fable and give them a happy ending, or something bad will happen. It's a story geared for young women 13 and up, but I can admire it for its big imagination, decent characterization, and talented writing. Dark Sahale by Sam Ferguson. What is a Sahale, much less a dark one? It's a person who can change into a dragon, while a dark one is attempting to kill all the other Sahales. One such Sahale, Eric Lockton, is taken away from his meditation to seek out this new enemy. It's basically about people kicking the asses of monsters, but the main hero's personality didn't do anything for me. Chaos Awakens by USA Today bestselling author Meg Jensen. I mostly forgot about this one, which isn't a good sign. It's about men versus orcs who clash due to religious differences. I remember how the character portrayed on the cover bangs some guy, turning him from a contemptuous travel companion into an uneasy ally. Oh, so that's how it works. I think the story would be better if the author had included the time-honored trope of prophecy and soothsaying. Our heroes actually make world-altering decisions based on some prophecy they hear. I'll always contend that prophecy ends up cheapening a character's motivation, giving them a reason to go on while knowing that they'll likely succeed. Imagine if Frodo went on his quest just because some prophecy told him to. Lord of the Black Land by Jack Connor. With a title like that, how can you go wrong? Guess what? It's about men versus orcs. But when it comes to dark fantasy, it can't get much darker than this. The orcs here are truly depraved. There's a demonic woman who walks around nude while streaked with blood, and there's a great mound of corpses that our hero must climb. There are 2 sequels which might be worth checking out, if only to see just how much darker this story can get. A Game of Thrones by George R.R. Martin. What the fuck?